All right, excited to be joined at this time by Coach Eric Bendig from Charleston, South Carolina. One of my favorite places to visit. Take my family up there almost every year. Coach, appreciate you being on with me today.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks for everything you're
Yeah,
doing for everybody in the coaching community.
yeah, it's been fun. It gives me something to do. Tell everybody listening a little bit about you, kind of how you got your start and where you are now. I know you're at a new school, and I'm trying not to give all that away. So
Right.
tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. So I was raised here in Charleston, a little suburb, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Um, Got to grow up in a great area. Went to Wando High School, biggest high school in the state of South Carolina. Um, Played for a great coach and Coach Bob Hayes. Went off to play at Presbyterian College. Spent a year out of. I got to play there. Spent a year out of graduation, thinking that I didn't want to have anything to do with football, and that was a mistake. Probably the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. I got in the finance world. I think I probably lasted about a week before I realized I made a mistake, and I gave it a year because that's what my parents told me to do. Right when that year hit, I moved back home to Charleston. Got into coaching with a guy at Hanahan High School down here that coached me in high school. He had moved on. And then after that first year, I got to go back to Wando. Spent 6 years there, kind of working my way up. But our head coach at Wando, Jimmy Noonan, was also the offensive coordinator. That's what kind of my background was. And so I moved on to a school around here, Ashley Ridge, out in Summerville, South Carolina, and became an offensive coordinator for 2 years. And then was lucky enough to get the head coaching job here at Philip Simmons. Great story. It's a new school, literally. It was a 9th and 10th grade school. When we started, we played a year at JV, and then we played our first varsity year with 9th, 10th, and 11th. And this year was our full third year senior class group. So it's been fun to be there from the ground up, literally. I mean, I got there and there was not a football in the building, no helmets, no
That's
knee
a
pads.
whole nother.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother course we could do on that,
Yeah.
starting from scratch.
I didn't
Wow.
mean to, but
Never did that.
I got versed in the finance world of athletics all over because I helped our AD from the start because I got hired in February before the school started. So we did a lot. I learned more about like lacrosse than I ever had in my life. Soccer.
I couldn't imagine starting even one sport
Yeah.
scratch, more or less all of them, and just the amount of money, resources, and things that you probably take for granted that you use
Yeah. It's
that you would then
wild.
have to get. Yeah.
Stock in the weight
Um,
room was probably the biggest thing. Just I know we could probably do
yeah.
something else on this
Yeah.
later, but that was 150, 200 grand, every you're like, oh God, I better do this right. you know.
Well, and there's really a lot of positives about being brand new, but it does come with a lot of challenges.
Yes.
And one of the challenges probably is educating parents with a very limited tradition. Obviously, you don't have a
Right.
tradition, so something like college recruiting becomes really more your job than maybe some of your counterparts in your region or something that
Absolutely.
some of this the colleges know them, they've been through there. Well, you guys brand new school, so um, I've looked through some of the stuff you guys do. Y'all do an awesome job. So it's not by coincidence that you're with us today. What I'm doing with this college recruiting aspect of what we're doing is we're trying to bring in a lot of different perspectives. So I've actually got a session like this with college coaches from every level. I've got an NAIA academic advisor. I've
Oh,
got
cool.
a Division III coach, a Division II coach, a Division I coach, and then a few high school coaches
Yeah.
because and I may even just want parents to watch this. I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I want the high school coaches or the parents or whoever's interested in this to see it from every perspective. So obviously our perspective here is the high school coach. But I really want you to talk as if you're talking to high school coaches, parents, and players, and maybe even to some degree college coaches. What do we expect from them?
Right.
Just because I asked them, what do they expect from you? When I talk to the college coaches, one of the questions is, what can a high school coach do better to promote his kids? I think there's so much ignorance in this subject, and I use that word when I talk about it because I mean it kind of sounds like an ugly word, but it means you don't know, not
Right.
that you're dumb. And there is so much ignorance in this topic from parents, from coaches, from athletes. They just kind of think magic's going to happen. They have no concept about how the money works or the different levels or what they have to do to get in. They think they do, and they kind of put it off until it's right at time to know, and then they don't. And so anything we can provide education-wise for that, I just think is a great resource for people. And so, I'm excited to hear what you got to say, Coach.
Absolutely.
We talk about these 5 things. I'm gonna scroll through real quick what we do, and then we'll go to your thing because you got something way better than this. But we when I've talked this to everybody I've talked to and studied, we said, look, there's 5 steps. You got to do step 1 to get step 2. You got to do step 2 to get step 3. Like you got to have the grades. They're not going whatever the minimum grades are to get in that school. That's got to be first. If you don't have them, the coach don't even want to see nothing else about it. Then you got to be good enough to play. Then you got to have the character. And a lot of people get cut off at number 2, to be honest. Either 1 or 2 got them. Either 1 or 2 got about everybody.
Yep. So
you're down to about the 5% of the kids that make it to character, work ethic. And then my last one I like to talk about is flexibility, where the kid has to want to move from Charleston, where it's the beach and it's pretty and it's sunny, and they may have to move to Minnesota.
Right.
So if they want to play college football, that might be their option. So they got to get real about this. And it might cost some money to move to Minnesota. I don't think the parents understand that when they're those 10th grade kids that are talking to you for the first time. And I think it's people like you that are educating people on trying to make that process a little more realistic for them. So from these questions we kind of talked about, I'm actually going to get out of this because I want to get into something you're doing. This is what you guys use. I'm going to share this, and let's see here. But I want you, Coach, because I've talked a lot already, to kind of walk us through. This is something you guys, I guess you have a meeting or something and you put this up. Walk us through when you would be to right here.
Yeah, so as the football coach, and you said some pretty interesting scenarios that kind of hit home to us. We had parents that were, like you said, ignorance is not a bad word in what we're trying to say right now. But we had our first senior class, and we had a lot of parents, this was their oldest child. So this was their first time going through it. So there was no precedent set with anybody this person's played with. There was no precedent set with anybody this person had in their household from probably a 20 to 25 year frame when their parents were in college. So we decided as a staff, me and the athletic director, that we were doing a disservice to our whole entire school in athletics by not doing something like this parent recruitment night, like this NCAA, NAIA, junior college night. And so we actually did this in February, right after the signing day period. So it was the middle of February. And I do a football tailored version at my parent meeting, and then make sure to hit it at our banquet in a bullet point session. So I try to do it 3 times a year for football people. And then our athletics night, we give this to the coaches. We obviously involve them as much as they want to. Our guidance counselors have this, and our administrators, so they can speak on it. But then I'd go ahead and do a really big night where we try to bring in, like you were talking about already, people. They I think people like hearing my voice, but they don't. I don't think, so when I can get other people to tell them stories and other people to tell them like this resource here, showing them that as well, I think you can't go wrong with having somebody else, a professional in the field. So we bring in, a guy, Jason Pugh from Exos, does a great job with taking our film for free, not charging the kids and promoting it out to college coaches. He's not the only one that does it. He's just a personal friend of mine. So I bring him in, and then we try to do our best when coaches are around to talk to our kids. Like, hey man, you talk to this guy right here, his grades aren't as good as they should be. You got to give him a little nudge, when it's acceptable through the rules, the NCAA. And we try to just, that's a real unofficial type of thing for us to do, is just to try to hit 1 or 2 kids that need to make sure their grades are right. So it's definitely something we're doing all year. This is something we do one big time a year in February.
Absolutely, Coach. So tell us a little bit about what you would go through this. We don't have to read this to everybody, but what's hitting home as you're presenting this stuff?
I like starting out with this slide right here, to be honest, and like you said, we won't read through it all. One of the things that I know as the head football coach, and you know this well, and you obviously know this in the job that you have now, there is so much out there information-wise, overload, that it can really, really put you in a mood that you shut down. It's like the kids, you give something to a kid, a play that, you really think is going to work, and it's great for you, but you're the head coach, you're a 30-year-old man. This is a 16-year-old kid. He's not understanding the concept of why we're running that play. This is the same thing with the parents. They have no clue. They think you apply, you take the SAT, you apply to school, and you get in or you don't. And I tried to really put them at ease by saying that this is not to confuse you. This is not to deter you. There are so many things going on. The biggest thing to do is to know that we're their advocate, that we're there for them. At the end of this meeting, I wanted to be like, hey, this is your time. Here's my cell phone number. Here's my email. You know, we got an open door policy. I'll never turn you away. You know, until your kid's sitting there in the school, you know, in Minnesota or, you know, Columbia, South Carolina, wherever, you know, we're going to be there to help them try to get, you know, as much of that responsibility taken care of on our end that we can. So that was my big thing when I told the parents of all sports that we're there to help you. And this is going to be confusing, but we're there to also walk you through it because everybody's different. So that's the big thing we hit. We try to give them, me as a coach, like, right, it starts with telling our kids there's a whole nother, you got your high school GPA, you know, you've got your, you know, in Georgia, you've got your Georgia public high school GPA that you got to get to graduate. We've got our South Carolina 5.0 universal grading policy. And that, no offense, and this, you know, but that grade really, if you want to play sports and then college, that grade really doesn't matter because you take 6 PEs, you got a 3-point something.
Yeah, they don't count.
Right.
Yeah,
So
they don't understand core. That's part of the ignorance we're talking
right.
about, and is they just don't understand that a core
Right.
class and what's not a core class, and I think it's our job to educate them. I'm gonna be honest. Back to my original point, this is not my favorite of the topics we talk about.
No.
I'll be honest with you, it's not. But you know, I'd much rather talk about winning culture and gaining support and things like that. But I really honestly think this topic has a chance to be the most helpful
right.
of some of the topics we're putting out there, that if the right person watches it, they can get an understanding of what is that expected of them. And, you know, I try to give some good analogies in some of the teaching part of this, but but part of it is, like you said, just there's a place for everybody. I got a friend, Amon Tinker, who is the guru of Georgia recruiting. If you know Coach Tinker, everybody follows him on Twitter. Coach Tinker told me the other day, he said, look, every kid can play college football.
Right.
Almost everybody. If they can play for you, they probably can play somewhere.
Yep.
They just don't understand where that is or exactly what they got to do it. So then they put their heart and soul into going to Clemson or South Carolina for you guys, and then they realize they're probably going to go to, you know, somewhere smaller than that.
Right.
And then they didn't realize that cost $20,000 a year. You know, they thought everything was free. They didn't know that PE classes didn't count. They didn't know that whatever. So then all that kind of disqualifies them. And like you said, you great analogy, they throw their hands up and they say, you know, I'm done with it. And then they just don't play because they didn't really know what to expect. So I agree, Coach. So tell us about these universals you got here.
I'll tell you what, if I can get one thing across to the parents and kids, is that the 9th grade class that you're sitting on, I know we're not in class right now. It's still a tough, crazy time we're in, but let's say we're, you know, all was equal. We're sitting in class. You're in your 9th grade, U.S. history, or I don't know. I teach on the business side, so I don't know what grade that is. But let's just say you're in your 9th grade social studies class. That grade is going to matter just as much as your Gov and Econ that you're going to take your senior year if you want to play college athletics. And I know you're sitting there right now. You're 14 or 15 years old, and it doesn't seem to matter. But if you want to play college athletics, this is something that – and so we try to hit the parents with that. And because, you know, the kids are still going to be kids, and I know they're very mature and they're getting more mature as the years go on, but the parents knowing that, they can help us be an advocate. Obviously, we're going to do our due diligence, like you said, about culture with making sure these grades are as good as we can. But then again, you know, we're not the ones doing the homework with them every night. So I try to hit with the grades right off the bat. I do that in every meeting I ever have with them. And I also tell them that we're going to be proactive. It's my job as a coach to offer you the opportunity to play not only in high school but in college. You said it very well, and Coach Tinker said it very well here. We can find you a place to go. We can find you a school if you can get in and you qualify that you can go play football. Because here's what's going to happen. You know, some of these non-scholarship schools or Division III schools that don't give out athletic money, that are private schools, they thrive on getting $50,000 or $40,000 injected into their fund. And so they got a guy that can get in. Sure. What's that? What's that? We can find you a place to play. So I tell them, we're going to be very proactive in marketing their kids. We're going to be very proactive as coaches in marketing their kids and helping them as much as we can. You have to be proactive as a parent with the grades, with learning the things that we're put out there. We try to make sure our website's up to date. Be proactive in reading the things that we give you. We give you handouts, please don't throw them away. Those are things. Offering up our services. I give an open door policy when they want to talk to this. Please come in to help us. If we go put out a Google form for your email and your address, and does he live at home with a single parent or you got both parents? Those things that these coaches want to know, and they want to know as recruiters to get to know the kid a little bit more in their status. You got to help us out. I mean, we can't do all of this. It's a team effort. And then, like you talked about with grades and kind of that ability that that you have to have it. There's a difference in we've been to practices. You probably had a couple people. I've coached some guys that have gone D1. I've coached some guys that they're not going to be able to play at D3 or NAIA or Division II. It's just the talent's not there, and we try to tell them that we're going to push them as much as we can. But it's a year-round effort in the weight room, the classroom, and basically whatever you're doing to equal out the fact that you might be 5'11" and not 6'2". You might be a little step slower than somebody else. So we try to just hammer that home that there is, talent's going to be huge. The measurables are going to be big. You look at women's volleyball in college. I mean, those girls are all 6'2", 6'3", and over. All right. So our 5'11", setter or whatever they call them, they're not going to be able to, get the same status as other people. We just gotta be upfront with them about it. It's, I went to Division II school. I mean, I was right where I needed to be. I probably overstepped my bounds. So we just try to be proactive and tell them all that and be upfront with them as much as we can. Tell them we're going to help them develop. Now part of your culture you were talking about, not to get off the subject there, but you got to tell them what you're going to do to help develop them. You can't just say, I'm going to take the 6'3", 6'5" offensive lineman that's already going to go D1 no matter what. And I'm not going to do anything different for the kid that, we've got to get the most out of. And the 5'10", 220-pound lineman that plays center, for you got to make sure you show them, hey, I'm going to do the best I can to maximize what he's got. So we just try to be upfront with them about that. And
I think that's important. Yeah, the work ethic is big. I mean, me and Coach did not coordinate this, by the way, on purpose. I like it better when we don't. But it's the same. But it's the same mantra. Grades and ability are going to cut out a lot of them. Either they're not good at one or the other. Then you get into character and work ethic, which separates them. And then you finally get into flexibility, which is, are you really willing to go wherever wants you? Because, the 1% of the kids, I mean, it's literally 1% of the kids that probably literally just show up and they go to Ohio State or Georgia or Clemson or whatever. It's not going to matter what you do. It doesn't matter if their work ethic's average. They're just so physically gifted, they're probably going to go anyway. We're not talking about those 1%. I mean, those people know who they are. And I think everybody wants to harp on that 1%. It's like the old saying of people used to say, well, Bill Gates dropped out of college or, well, that doesn't mean you should drop out of college. Right. I mean, that's just a crazy art. They want to talk about the one time that something happened or,
right.
Because there are guys out there that probably don't work that hard, that have issues, and they still go to Alabama. I went to Alabama, so I'll pick on Alabama. They still go there. But, the reality is 99.9% of the kids you coach are not going to Alabama or Clemson, either one. They're going somewhere else. And so there's just so much variance on this. But those 5 things are very true. And this timeline is something I always get asked about. When do they need to know? And a lot of times with Division I athletes, if you don't know pretty early, it's probably not going to happen for you.
Right.
I mean, there's exceptions, but that's generally what it means, right?
I mean, I've seen it, like you have. I've seen it for the last the last 12, 13 years of being a college athlete and a coach now. They're gonna find that guy freshman and sophomore year that fits the mold of the
it's not hard to pick them out.
No. And I've had
I know people don't like to hear that, but it's not that hard to pick out who Clemson wants or Alabama. Right.
I mean, you look at every one of these, and I love them. I'm a guy that loves these things as a coach. I mean, every one of these stories where somebody gets a scholarship that's a walk-on, like football-wise, where they give, even basketball, they televise or promote these things on social media where they give a walk-on scholarship at Clemson or Carolina or Alabama. Usually that kid looks like, the kids I've got in multiples in my school, the Hunter Renfro types. I love the guy,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
we got him running around in Clemson at first. They didn't want him that way. They want to bring him in and hey, maybe we'll get something out of it. And that's great, but they're it's a lot harder to get that. I love these Division II and Division, the FCS and those guys. They get their work cut out for them because they don't stop until right before signing day of that kid's senior year. I think those guys are really recruiting and beating the bushes and stuff like that. The big, the Division I guys you're going to find those. They're freshman and sophomore year, and they're going to be locked down.
Absolutely. I'm going to let some of this sit up for a minute while we're talking, because
Yeah.
I think some of these slides are good to people to understand that, there's the NC, we're not going to insult anybody's intelligence.
Right.
But so if you already know all this, tune me out. There's the NCAA. They have 3 divisions in football. That's really 4 divisions. There's a FBS, a CS, but there's Division II, Division III. And you look at the number of student athletes, how many teams, there's just a lot of them, and then here you see Division I, Division II, Division III. Well, the difference between Division I and Division II basically is the amount of money that you can get scholarship-wise, the number of players on the team that are on scholarship. And there's obviously there's a little different level of competition of sort. But the Division III level is no athletic aid, all academic aid. And that kind of sometimes surprises people. And it's totally based on grades. So if you're one of these kids with really average grades, even average, not even horrible, just average grades, you're not good enough to play at Clemson, but you think you're pretty damn good. You're for the region, you're pretty good. Say you're the best running back in the region, which that's pretty good. You can think in your mind who was the best running back in the region last year. Well, I can speak for Georgia. In Georgia, we have 8 regions per classification. We basically have 8 classifications because single A's 2 classifications. So that's 64 people that are the best running back in their region, And then if you multiply that number across 50 states, you're looking at probably over 300 to 400 people who are the best running back in their region. And, some of these big schools are taking 1 or 2. And then that trickles down to the next group, and they're taking 1 or 2. So even at Furman, somebody might think, well, he can't play at Carolina, but he can play at Furman. No, not necessarily, because those 400 people who were best running back in their region all got to go somewhere.
Right.
And, only about 150 of them or so are going to go to these Division I schools. About 100 more, 150 more are going to go Division II. So if that puts you still being that guy you were thinking of as the best running back in your region, he still could be awesome, a great high school player, the best player in your region, and he still could end up at a Division III school, except now he's got average grades and he can't even go there.
Right.
Because they can't afford to pay the full tuition. He can't get any academic money. And nobody explained to this kid that this was likely the plight for him.
Yep.
And so I know I'm getting preachy on that, but I want people to understand that. And then, of course, jump in and interrupt me if I'm missing something. But I want people to understand that. And I think while these numbers are up on the screen, you can kind of get a decent feel for what we're talking about. And just the number of people, like, look at some of these sports, the probability of you playing beyond high school. Men's basketball, 3%, baseball's a little higher. Football somewhere in between that, I think. Yeah, 6.8. I'd say, basketball is probably the hardest one
to
get in because of smaller numbers, and they really can be picky with heights and weights and whatever.
Right.
But you think about that, man. It's just the sheer numbers make it seem like that dad of that kid who was the best running back in the region really thinks, well, surely my kid ran for 1,800 yards. Surely somebody will take you. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. You have to be proactive and understand where your options are.
It's true. We like to show this graphic like, a lot of people do. This ain't the first time, it's been around. I pulled this right from the NCAA website before we did it, on their tutorials. And I'm a big believer. We, like you probably did in a lot of things they're going now. We were lucky enough to have, we have varsity sports is what we call it during the day. So our kids train year round, no matter if you play another sport or not. So I always preach the other sports, but it's something that I like to show some of these basketball guys. I'm all about basketball. Our basketball coach is on our staff. and our, his assistants on the field. Like, so we work together. But I tell them all the time, it's not going to hurt you. Come on out. What's the worst that can happen? I've seen some guys play 1 year of high school ball and get a D2 offer, and then all of a sudden they're playing in the NFL, or they're at least they've blown it out. They're that 6'4" power forward that now is a tight end. So we try to use those stories a little bit.
6'4" post player, not a lot of places.
No, not you try to be as nice as you can.
Football players.
You try to tell them as nice as you can, but
I mean, and the same could be true for baseball.
Yeah.
Against football, sometimes there's certain kids that may not meet the football requirements for Division I can make the baseball requirement for Division I if they're athletic enough. So it's just important for a person to educate themselves of what is realistic and try to be self-aware. I know that's really hard for parents. I got kids. I'm probably not self-aware with them, but look in the mirror and see what your kid really can do. If your kid's 5'9", if he's the best tackler in the state of South Carolina, but he's 5'8" or 9", he probably is not going to the big school. He's just probably not. And I hope I'm wrong. Prove me wrong.
Exactly.
It has happened.
Yeah, exactly.
But be self-aware. Know that he's 5'9". Don't act like he's 6'1".
Right.
He's not. And don't act like they're not using that against him, because they totally are.
That height weight, scenario we put out there into our coaches and players and parent manual that we hand out and put online, that is pretty up to date. You can get one of those up to date usually every year. There's websites out there that are, I think one's called Tracking Football, but they put it out there up to date what these guys in Division I look like physically. And so we put that in their hands just so they know, like you said, you got to educate them. Our best tackler is 5'8". I mean, I love the kid. He's got great grades.
He usually is.
Yeah, he's got great grades, but he's not going to be, Clemson, they like to say hello to him, when they stop by the school, So
but he needs to look at these other options. And here's the thing, Coach. If Clemson offers him late, who the hell's going to be mad about that?
Right.
Like, we're not saying that kids, there can't be things happening. What we're saying is don't put all your eggs in that basket, Understand where you are. I mean, I'm not trying to shatter a kid's dream. It's actually very much the opposite. We're trying to give him a chance to really genuinely compete, because the same people that go to Alabama and Auburn and Georgia and Clemson, they're not all the first round picks,
Right.
So they did get picked first out of high school. They didn't always get picked first out of college.
Right.
So go somewhere that's realistic to you and continue to develop. So here's a sliding scale for people who don't quite understand this. This is out everywhere. You can Google it.
Yep.
But there is an understanding. You have to make a certain test score for your core GPA. Core GPA means math, English, science, social studies, maybe a foreign language.
Yep.
That's it. That's the only classes you get to count. You count the best 16 of them, and you get a GPA. People do not understand this, by the way. They do not. You have to count these 16 core classes. No PEs, no basket weaving, none of that. That's out. You got to just count these. Every time you make a C, that's a 2. Right. And if you look on there at a 2, you better be killing it on test score if you got a 2. Exactly. So, understand that. Keep that in mind as you're moving forward. You can kind of see here, Coach done a great job of explaining what this is. And Coach, I don't know I don't want to put you out there. We're kind of putting you on the spot here. But if anybody's watching this and would like for you to email this to them, would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because, I'm kind of flying through some of this. But
you know how it is. Some of these screenshots are taken right from the NCAA's website where they allow you to do that. That's what it's there for. And then some of them are stuff I put together, and some of them are stuff I've seen. I really like that from somebody else, and absolutely.
Okay, because I'm moving kind of fast through this, but this is really some good stuff. And then you look at Division III, which is where I think some of the least amount of education occurs. Like, people really don't understand what the options are there, and you've got to determine how you're going to pay for school at this level.
Right.
And traditionally, you can get some academic money. It's not that you're necessarily paying everything. It just means they cannot pay you for being a good running back.
That's right.
It has to be from grades, and that changes things. The NAIA is another division, or it's another organization. It's not the NCAA.
Right.
It probably, the way I try to describe to folks is, it's probably comparable to Division II more than Division III. There is scholarships. There are some good teams in the NAIA. There's some good opportunities for kids. Their academic requirements are probably a little different. You can see it here where it says a kid has to have an 860 on the SAT. or 18 on the ACT.
Yeah,
They have to have a minimum
ACT,
2.0 and graduate in the top half. They have to do 2 of those 3 things. So if you're at a real high academic school and you're barely in the bottom half, as long as you did the other 2, you could get in. Some people can get in through this way that can't get in maybe in NCAA. And so NAIA is a great option for them. We've got a team here near me at Reinhardt that's been really good in NAIA ball. And so, you know, I'm very familiar with that. And they've gotten some kids over the years that probably couldn't quite get into FCS type schools and made good players out of them. Talk a little bit about the clearinghouse, Coach.
You know, it's one of those things that we had, like I said, we had our first senior signee this year. You know, his parents weren't, you know, we hadn't done, and this was before he was a guy that was getting recruited for a while. He one of those things he forgot, you know, we kind of told him when he did his tests, he didn't send it in there. So he had to pay the extra, I think it was $25 to send it off to him. So we added this in there after that scenario, knowing that, hey, we, you know, can't assume that they know what the clearinghouse is. You know, they basically, it's very simply put. It's a weird process, obviously, to go through, especially as a parent, I'm sure. Very simply put, they're the ones that basically check you off if you're eligible to play. They're the ones that say you can play in the NCAA or you're not. You're not going to be able to play anything but NCAA, Division II. You know, you could play NCAA Division III if you got into their school, something like that. They're the ones that basically are the final say. They're the final tick mark for all these coaches that come in and request our kids. And they, you know, they got our transcripts and all that. That's why we have to send those test scores to them, because they're the ones that are basically, you know, I can say you can play. Georgia, you know, Coach Smart can say you can play. But if this person, whoever they are, this, you know, nameless, faceless person at the NCAA Eligibility Center doesn't tell you that you can play, can't do it.
Yeah, that's where the eligibility is. I mean, now the next thing is, so you got in, let's say you did the clearinghouse, you got a school that wants you. Now you got to pay for it, because we're not talking right now really to the SEC, ACC signings.
Yeah.
We're in a level where you're at least going to have to pay something. Well, you know, you may say, well, we don't have any money. My family don't have the money for that. Well, you need to understand this acronym, you know, FAFSA, because you know, and talk a little bit about what this is, Coach, FAFSA.
Yeah. You know, I remember going through it because I went to a Division II school. I remember my mom talking about it. We did it every year. You know, so it was one of those things I think maybe I took for granted. So this is our first year with seniors, and you know, I've had other schools where I've done the recruiting where we educated them on stuff like this too. But this year we really had to push this out there, because we have, just like any school and a lot of schools out there, we have kids from all over the socioeconomic map. We've got kids that want for nothing, that might not, they apply for this and, you know, they go through it and they don't, you know, they don't get any help. They don't qualify for that financial aid of it, or student aid. We've got we've got some kids that are, you know, single parent. They might not even be with their mother or father. You know, we've seen it a lot as coaches, and they qualify for almost the whole boat. I mean, you pay $500 for books, you know, and that's a great thing. So I try to tell them that scenario, and this is definitely one of those ones that is hit very early for us. We hit this right in August, because that's when you kind of got to get yourself ready to go, to know what's going to happen. And then January, you got to be kind of that first in, you know, when that money's done and they serve their purpose, they're not really out there throwing out huge packages. That's one of the things I learned. You know, it definitely is not a first come, first serve per se, but the earlier you get in, the better it is. And so we put that around for our people to know that no matter what, you might qualify for $1,000, you might qualify for $40,000 at some of these private schools in D3. So let's go ahead and knock it out together. So we have a day that we go through that at school with the parents too in January.
I think that's great, Coach. That's fantastic. So I like you put these 2 things on here in the next slide, because I think I get asked this question a lot. We're talking about different perspectives. So we kind of been talking a lot to high school kids and high school parents right now. Well, this is the key. This is probably the number one question they ask. A kid says, how do I get more exposure? A parent says, how do I help my kid get more exposure or whatever? Well, my answer to both of those would be simple. You know, you're probably getting exposure. You just probably don't like it.
Right.
But you're probably getting exposure. Somebody just may not like you, and that's why you hadn't heard from them. But you worry about what you can control. This is my answer to that question. And when I look at this slide, it immediately comes to me, focus on grades, B or higher core classes. That's something you can control that. You don't get to control if Furman's looking at you or not. You do get to control if you made a B in that class. Continue year-long training. You get to control if you're working hard in the weight room, if you're working hard at practices, if you're getting better. Or as a parent, are you encouraging your kid? Are you demanding good grades? Because if you're not doing all those things, then why are you asking what we can do differently? Because that stuff you control. I cannot make a school watch your film. I cannot make a school like you. I can't make a school offer you. But you can control those things. So, keep that in mind if you're a parent or a student when looking at this. And this talking about core classes, we kind of hit on this a little bit. There's some specifics in there on what is a core class, but just keep in mind it is not, some of those classes you're used to making an A in every school.
Right.
What do the coaches and counselors do, man? What a great slide. What can we do for you? And I'm going to get on to some of this other stuff because this kind of tells how it works South Carolina. I'm going to scroll through this so people can see it because I think every school should make something like this. So I want people to see it, but I don't want to keep you all day, Coach.
No.
But I want to see I want to show people some of the other stuff you were doing because now what I really want to do is turn the attention a little bit onto the high school coaches. What can the high school coaches do? And so if we can, let's see here. I don't think I can share my screen with some of the Excel stuff. But I want you to tell a little bit about what you guys do as a high school coach when you're talking to college coaches. Let's get away from the parent meeting, and we're talking to the high school coaches now. What's something they can do to help their players?
I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way because we still kind of learn it's like anything else. You learn how to be better offensive, defensive, head coach, whatever it is. Every year I learn something that I can do to help it get exposure for our kids. There's so much out there that I can do, me personally, I can do in my free time or whatever you call it to promote our kids. And I mean, if you've seen it because you have an active presence on it. I mean, Twitter's been great. If I've got a question or if a kid tells me, hey, coach, somebody from Furman, let's keep on that train. Somebody from Furman's been like, hey, man, I got a guy I follow. I'm a DM him real quick because I don't have a cell phone number. I mean, that's how I get in touch with people. So I just think that, in a nutshell, trying to put this out there is that there might not be, I don't know, everybody's got a different head coaching job description from their district. Everybody's got one. You know yours very well. I know mine very well because it's what I'm evaluated on. Inside of that, there's no real specific, hey, you need to make sure 2 kids sign or this person or, you have a parent meeting does this. It's just a one big kind of overarching thing that says it is your job as the coach of the program and leader of the program to educate your parents, your players, and your coaches on how to help them get to the next level. And it's real vague. It's perfectly fine to say that. So in that, it's how much do you really want to help your kids? If you say your culture is about helping these kids, you got to go out there and try. And sometimes I feel like I fail, if I don't help a kid out or if I have a kid that's got a 2-1 and can't get to where he wants to go, maybe I didn't do a good enough job. Like you got to take it personal. And sometimes, I really do. Recruiting is a personal game and that it's all built on relationships. And as a coach, you got to make them. I attend everything they allow us to. I know they have them in Georgia, any recruiting fair, anything that some free service that, within reason that we vetted that, our kids don't pay for, especially, Exos or Palmetto Preps. We've got things like that. I'm going to send National Prep, I'm going to send I'm going to send all of our stuff to them because it's my job to do that. If there's a publication out there that's writing about high school football in the state of South Carolina, the Southeast, and they want a list of our guys, it's my job. I don't have anything within my time frame of my workday that I should be doing more than helping our kids get promoted. And I just think that's something that we all need to look at. I struggle with it, man. I'm not trying to preach to the choir. I'm not trying to make like we're better than anybody else. I just know that part of my job, and it has been when I was an assistant coach, is helping as many kids as I can, learn that they either want to play and they can play, or they at least have the opportunity to play. And so that's why we try to do above and beyond in recruiting to make sure that we are offering that up to our kids. And
absolutely,
I think it's just part of our job.
That's a great way to put it, Coach. I mean, your job as a high school coach is to do the best you can do. And that's not a cop-out answer. That's just you do the best you can do. I mean, I've sat here in this whole clinic and talked about what you can't do, and probably sounded a little ugly. I didn't mean to, but about some stuff where it just is what it is. But the truth is, it is our job to do the best we can do. It is not our job to get somebody offered, because we can't do that. What I always say is, I don't know one high school coach not trying to get somebody a scholarship. That's such a cop-out thing for a parent to say, or a kid. Every coach I know would love the whole team to get a scholarship. It doesn't work like that. So it is our job to not be lazy and do the best you can do to help these kids. But sometimes it still is going to be for naught, and you just have to move on. But, I think that was great, Coach. That was a fantastic way to kind of answer that last question. I really appreciate you. We'll probably get you back sometime talking about something else.
Yeah.
This is a helpful topic. Like I said, I'd be lying if I said this was my favorite thing to talk about. It's not. But it is, I think, it could make the most difference if people started really understanding what they can do. And whichever one of these 4 categories you fit over here on the screen, what can you do better? Because I think the college coach can do better too, to be honest. I think they can do a better job of explaining what actually is real about their school when they come into the field house. If you're at Birmingham Southern, which is a Division III school, you're explaining to them it's going to cost this. Are you a real candidate to move to Birmingham, Alabama, and pay this? Because if you're not, don't waste our time. I think, so everybody can do better.
Somebody said something to me about some of them, and some of them are great. Let me tell you, you've dealt with them more and longer than I have, but some college coaches do an unbelievable job. But you're right. Some of them have one of it was like, I feel like I'm talking to somebody like I dated, and all of a sudden I can't get them to call me back. We had this 2 or 3 date courtship. It was great. Text messages answering. All of a sudden, like, hey, coach, is this kid got a chance for a scholarship? And it's like, oh, I got left on read. I got nobody that can help me. There's definitely that whole, just tell us yes or no kind of thing. And we got to do that too. There's
some education and some improvements on both ends of that. But, I know some really good dudes on every side of this. I know some great parents that really just want their kids to get better and have a chance to play. They just need a little more education on what they want. So, Coach, I appreciate you joining me. It meant a lot to me. Learned a lot, and look forward to getting you back sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Anything needs, just let me know. I'll
tell everybody on the way out how they can get you on Twitter, or what's the best way to get a hold of you if they got a question.
My email's Bendig, BENDIG, the letter E, so Bendig at bcsdschools.net. I have to look at my Twitter account. I don't even know what it is. I think it's just at Coach Bendig. Hold on.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, at Coach Bendig, BENDIG. And I'm an open book. I've stolen from people. I don't think that's the best word to use, but I love all your stuff. I love your stuff. So I met you. I love your stuff.
Still all of it you want, Coach.
Yeah,
and most of it I got from somebody or tweaked it or whatever. You can look
at my playbook too. If I don't score 7 points, it don't matter. So.
Well, I appreciate it, Coach. I hope you have a good day, and let us know if you need anything.
You too, Coach. I appreciate it.